Welcome back to the James House and the Maritime Irish Mossy Museum. We're going to discuss shipwrecks today. Some of you may know of them and some of you may not. Scituate's the home of hundreds of shipwrecks along the coast. The coast is treacherous, as you can tell by looking at all the rocks. But of these hundreds of shipwrecks, we can't cover them all, so we're just going to hit some major points. And if anyone's interested, you can also visit the Maritime Irish Mossy Museum Sundays 1 to 4. We're going to discuss the Forest Queen, which was a cargo ship. It sailed to China, India, the Philippines, stopped in England and Ireland. What it was an opium ship in the east. What it would do is it would sail to India, pick up its load of drugs, opium, sail to a specific port in China where it would sell the opium in exchange for silver. Then with the silver, you would buy Chinese products, porcelain, tea, whatever else you could get from China, and then it would sail back to the United States. When it sailed back, it stopped in England, Ireland, and when it sailed back to the United States, it sank off third cliff in a storm. It had 45 Irish immigrants on it at the time, a crew of 9. I believe everyone was rescued. The ship was there for a while. People took what they could off of it, planks, rope, whatever. And then Daniel Ward, who was famous for bringing Irish mossing to Scituate, claimed salvage rights, and he salvaged what was left. It had cochineal beetles, which are used to make red dye, indigo, Chinese porcelain. We have some divers that dive on it. They found a lot of tools. They found, believe it or not, champagne bottles, Lee Perrin's Worcestershire sauce, along with 2 huge ingots, which we thought were pure silver. We had them assayed first. They said, yes, it's silver. We had it done again. It was actually tin that was covered with silver. So it's kind of a lesson that when you deal with drug dealers, you don't always get what you expect. But anyway, you have a group of divers, Bill Carter, Hank Lynch, Deb Jackson, and Tom Malloy, who've died on it. They have the rights to dive on it. They bring up what's called a concretion, which is like a mass of everything fused together. And you chip away and you find various things that were in it. And we think that Daniel Ward got something of value because he was able to buy property on First Cliff and build his big house there. On November 27, 1898, the Portland Gale struck New England. It claimed 400 deaths, 150 vessels. One of them was the Portland, also called New England's Titanic. We don't have an exact count of how many passengers were on the boat because the captain's ship log went down with the Portland. Now you are required to take 2 logs, one on shore and one that goes with the boat. The estimate of death is 193 to 245 persons, including the 63 crew members. What happened was one of the patrolmen that patrolled the beaches on the Cape found, first it was ice cream containers, then he found a life preserver that said Portland. Then bodies started to wash up on Cape Cod. They assumed, because everyone's watch stopped, the watches that they found on the body stopped at the same time, that it actually sank closer to the Cape. That was actually wrong. We had a person that studies tides and currents, and he thought that maybe they were off by 12 hours, and they actually found the wreck of the Portland off Gloucester. Everyone died. There were a few people that didn't, and they were fortunate that one of them hooked up with his buddies and they went out for a couple of drinks and he missed the boat. There was another, a Mr. Gott from Maine, who was heading back to Maine, and he noticed that a mother cat was taking the kittens off the boat, one at a time. Being superstitious, he thought maybe it wasn't a good idea to get on the boat, and he didn't. So he is basically a survivor by not getting on the boat. On June 10th of 1930, we had the most deadly wreck Scituate had. It was the Fairfax and the Pintus. They collided in heavy fog, buoy 4 by the mouth of the North River. It was unusual because of all these 51 people that died, no one ever was deemed responsible for the wreck. They thought the Fairfax was going too fast. The Pintus had this huge horn blowing in the fog. They collided. The Pintus immediately burst into flame. It was carrying high-octane gasoline, sank right away. The flames, the fire and the flames spread to the Fairfax. People jumped into water to escape the flames. So it was a tragic situation.
And into Boston Harbor limps the liner Fairfax after a collision that tore this hole in her bow. The Fairfax had rammed and sunk the tanker Pintus. For days afterwards, Boston Harbor became a sea of burning oil as the tanker's cargo rose to the surface and burst into blaze. 44 lives were lost in the panic that followed the collision, which occurred in heavy fog. No sign of the Pintus except its cargo was apparent. Veteran seamen claimed the fire on the sea was a sight never seen before. Water, mortal enemy of fire, became unequal to the task of combating it in this unusual battle in Boston Harbor.
The Atresco was originally the Fort Poplar built in Canada for World War II to supply goods to Britain because the U-boats were sinking boats almost as fast as they were being made. After that, it became the Atresco. St. Patrick's Day Eve on 1956, the Atresco was trying to make Boston Harbor. It couldn't get in because of a storm. It anchored off Scituate, the anchor chains broke, and it grounded at Scituate Light. The town mobilized to rescue it. They used a Lyle gun to throw a line up. They got everyone off safely, and it stayed there until Thanksgiving. We would have, on weekends, around 30,000 people that would come down to see this boat. People came from Boston and everywhere. That was when it was popular to go for a weekend drive. They would come to Scituate, look at the boat, and decide, this is not a bad town, and they moved here. Scituate's population probably doubled within a few years. What was interesting about the Atresco was when it was at the lighthouse, the closest house to the lighthouse was Mrs. Russo, who was Italian. She grew up in Italy, we believe, in the town next to the captain of the Atresco. So all the sailors were in her house, and she could speak with them. They stayed around for a little bit, and eventually went to Boston. On October 7th, in 1849, the brig St. John was wrecked on Grampus Ledge in Cohasset, probably the largest tragedy on the South Shore. It had 143 passengers. Of those that was saved, 9 were the crew, and there were 11 passengers saved. Unlike the Forest Queen, where the captain was the last one off, on the brig St. John, it seemed like the captain and his first mate were one of the first ones off. And it's tragic that they would abandon the passengers and the crew like that. Henry David Thoreau heard about it. He took a train to Cohasset. He went down and looked at it, and he was overwhelmed by the tragedy. There were bodies all over the place washing up, waves still crashing on the boat. It ended up broadside in Grampus's Rock. The waves crashed over it, washed whole families ashore, frozen, dead. Massive grave was built, coffins everywhere, and it was, without a doubt, horrible. These people were fleeing Ireland because there was no food. It was the hunger, They were within sight of where they wanted to go, and most of them perished. We have a lot of information about various shipwrecks along the Scituate coast. We'd love to have you come and talk to our docents and learn a little bit more. And we're going to come back again and we're going to discuss other aspects of what we have in the museum, Irish mossing, shipbuilding, so on and so forth. This is a very unique museum. Everyone that comes here is amazed at what we have and how well it's taken care of. So once again, come visit us, please.